Hello and welcome back for episode 12 of Veteran Instincts. This week we're very excited to be joined by the reigning Australian national champion, Micheal O'Connor. Hello.
Hello, how are we all doing?
Good, thank you very much. And because Lloyd is less than reliable, 186th Supremo and X-Wing famous Alex Burt has stepped in at the last minute to help out. Hello, Alex.
Hello. I feel like I'm not going to live up to expectations of that introduction.
Well, there is a lot of pressure. The world is watching.
I'm just going to ask stupid sounding questions.
That is what you're here for. So this is a game from the second Vagabond online tournament. Micheal having trounced me in the first round, obviously we couldn't have a game where I lost on stream, so we've picked up his, I think, second round game to talk to you about. And Micheal is here facing Dom Flannigan, who is now becoming a channel regular, although we've not actually had him on yet. So Micheal, why don't you talk us through your list, why you chose it, and then talk a bit about sort of what Dom was running and what you thought about the matchup going in.
So I bought Suntier, Duchess, Vermeil, and Fifth Brother, and this was mostly about trying out the homing missile Fifth Brother interaction and just trying to scare people away with 2 auto damage, 1 being a crit. Kind of wanted to fly some Suntier, and the other pieces seemed logical. When I saw that it was Rebel Beef, so I was running 200 in this version, so he also was, and I ended up as first player, so Suntier was moving before Wedge, which I basically meant my target from here out was kill Wedge first, and then hopefully just let Suntier run around. That was my aim.
We're seeing the obstacles go down here. Did you bring the rocks or the gas clouds?
I bought the clouds.
Any particular reason, or just what you're used to flying with?
Mostly what I'm used to flying with recently. Also with aces, I like something like Suntier. I just like having clouds to hide behind. You know, I kind of like if they're on one side, I will try approach from the cloud, and then sort of boost barrel roll around it to the side that they're not at. So I like bringing clouds for that reason.
And yeah, Alex, that sounds sensible, right? Like the initiative here is obviously key, and Suntier has to be really careful until Wedge is dead. So I think going in, the plan of deal with Wedge and then kind of play the rest of the game seems sensible. What do you think?
Yeah, that seems like what I would be doing if this was me. Like Wedge is usually what has to die first if he's present in a rebel list. So I respect that.
And then we can see you've got that line of sort of gas clouds across the middle. That seems to fit with what you want to do. It gives you a bit of a wall to approach behind. And Dom kind of setting up first here, putting AP5 in a corner. With the setup of your list, what was the thinking behind that?
So the thinking is Suntier baits whilst the others come round and try and flank him, and slow roll a little bit in case he turns in. If he turned in, I could sort of swing back in around the gas clouds and approach back in from another side. That was the theory going forward with it.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you say, it's a common play in X-Wing to have that bait ship and then try and get everything else on the flank. But you need to give yourself the opportunity to react to what your opponent's doing. So, Dom's setting up in that top corner, and as we see the rest of the ships go down, they're all going to kind of end up there. And the temptation would be with Fifth Brother, particularly where you started him, to sort of set off quickly down the near side board edge to get on the flank. But obviously, if then Dom was to turn everything left towards you, what you've actually done is sat fifth in front of the entire list rather than on the flank. So yeah, that kind of first turn slow roll and give yourself the option to either come towards Dom's board edge or turn back up your own board edge to react to what he did is very sensible. Duchess is a kind of interesting piece here. The initiative role is really important, right? I mean, not only has it meant that Wedge is moving after Suntier, but throughout the list, you've got stuff moving first that ideally you would want to be moving second. So with Duchess, had you won the bid and you kill Wedge, then Duchess also becomes an ace. But here you've got Janels able to kind of react to where she goes. So I'd be interested to see how you kind of try to deal with that.
Yeah, at this point I was less worried about that because generally Rebel Beef will stay together to start with. So whatever AP5 does, I'm fairly confident the rest of them will do, at least on the opening.
Yeah.
At least that's how I've handled Rebel Beef before, and also how I played Rebel Beef when I run it. So I wasn't too worried about that.
And I think that's interesting, isn't it? That it opens up opportunities for both sides. You say the Rebels a lot of rebel archetypes like kind of sticking together, flying in a block, and you can do exactly what you've described, where you use the low initiative ship to kind of inform you about where everything else is going. So despite the fact that Duchess is moving before Jan and before Wedge, if AP5 is banked in, you kind of bet on the fact that everything else has. The opportunity it gives the rebel player, of course, is to use that, right, and double bluff and kind of. I don't know that I've ever done it successfully. But there've definitely been a fair few games where I've attempted to throw my opponent off with the I1 move, hoping that they would, assume that everything else was going the same way. But as I say, I don't know that I've ever kind of pulled it off as well as I wanted to. So Dom continuing to set up in the box in his corner here, and Cynthia setting up at that 45-degree angle, which I like. It kind of threatens that you might turn in, but obviously, as you said, the more likely thing is that you just run away, because Cynthia doesn't want to be jousting this block all on his own.
No, not at all.
What Dom, small choices, but what Dom has done with the setup here, setting up in the corner he has, is he's flying into the open corner of the board. And I think if you've got a list that flies in a block or flies in formation, those really small things make a huge difference. So if Dom had set up in the bottom corner, then in 2 turns' time, the asteroid that's at the bottom left there is going to be in his way. But actually setting up here, he's got, assuming he comes straight down the board edge, he's got a good sort of 3, 4, 5 turns of flying into the open space, nothing to really break up his formation. So we're setting up here for the opening moves. Just a final word on the rock placement. Are you happy with how it ended up, or in an ideal world, would you have done things differently?
Obstacle-wise, I'm okay. So Fifth Brother and Duchess both have clouds between me and him, which I'm happy with. That's kind of what I want. So I can at least slow roll a little bit, and if we end up facing each other, there's probably an obstacle, and I'm okay. Suntia is going to be fine, because Suntia will not be going towards them. He will be trying to bait, and he'll end up behind a cloud. The only thing I don't like is where Vermeil is. So first time playing the list, and yeah, I should have had Vermeil where Fifth Brother is, and Fifth Brother where Vermeil is, so that Vermeil has this nice slow set of banks around the rock and then around the cloud and then down that channel, threatening the whole time. Whereas you'll see what I do with him shortly, and it's a mess.
Yeah, it looks where he is now that he's going to have to approach Dom's list kind of at a similar time to everything else. He's going to either have to fly through those clouds or take a couple of turns weaving around them. And he's a kind of a bit of a cruise ship with that ailerons ability, and kind of those big banking turns he likes, but trying to maneuver in tight spaces is not his forte. So having set up and told us that you're kind of intending to kite with Suntir, is the idea here to kind of turn everything down and get it along that bottom board edge whilst Dom, you're assuming Dom's coming towards the top?
So it would be probably do my normal, 2 forward with Suntia roll out and just see what happens. Duchess, I think 1 forward's here, and just, sit. Basically, it's try and slow roll and see what he does. And try and base what he's doing off where AP5 is, which is why Fifth Brother goes towards a rock and then just decides where he's going to barrel roll. And that's kind of it. And so now Fifth Brother is probably going to flank. That's where I'm thinking. This is where I forgot how Vermeil worked. I forgot I had to ailerons him still first. I don't just get to stop. I have to ailerons then stop, which threw out a bit of planning for him as well.
Yeah, and those things happen with a new list, don't they? It's the first time you take a new ship, and the first time you look at the dial, and you're like, I've certainly planned moves, and next time I'm going to 3-bank, and then you look at the dial, and there's no 3-bank. You're like, oh, that's a shame. And Alex, thoughts about Dom sort of slow rolling here, but with purpose. Do you like the slow roll opening from Dom? You should have gone a bit quicker.
Well, I mean, I think it's similar to what Michael was saying, really. Like a lot of games tend to be like, well, I'll go slow, see what the other guy does, and then it's sort of like who cracks first, and then tries to sort of jump on something. And like Dom is usually very patient as well. I played against him a bunch of times, and he'll usually sort of like wait until he's definitely confident that he can get unanswered shots or like a favourable exchange before jumping on something. So it seems like fairly consistent with what I'd expect, really.
Yeah, and I think both of you doing a really nice job of it. So slow rolling is something that gets talked about a lot if you kind of listen to podcasts, and I think that there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and both players at the moment are doing it the right way, which is, yeah, you want to go slow, you want to try and wait until your opponent commits, but you need to keep your options open while doing that. So Dom here has gone one straight forward. It's very simple, but has the opportunity still to turn down this lane between the gas clouds and the rocks on his side of the board, or to go hard to the corner that Suntir is currently in. And it'd be interesting to see what he does on the next turn, because I think now what he wants to do is still keep both of those options open, but he wants to put himself in a position where he's not, that central sort of top center gas cloud isn't going to get in his way for the turn in for subsequent turns. So I wonder whether next turn Dom jumps a bit quicker to get kind of past that row of gas clouds, especially given that Vermeil in particular already is with the sort of slight error in setup and the slight misunderstanding of the ailerons, or forgetting about the ailerons, is already starting to look like he's going to take a few turns to get to where he really wants to be. So, Michael, given that kind of very slight kind of error or misunderstanding with Vermeil, do you consider changing your plan here? Is there a sort of version of events where Vermeil turns up board and gets more aggressive, or are you still kind of committed to kind of bringing him around the side?
I was still at this point waiting sort of to see what he did. So, I mean, I'm fairly certain this is a one bank from Vermeil because I couldn't think of it. It leaves both my options open, and I don't have to ailerons this turn. And yeah, this turn I was wondering how fast he'd go because I knew he was banking up Moldy Crow focuses. So does he slow roll again and just perfectly leave that 2-turn down, or I went one straight. Yeah, that was definitely wrong with Vermeil then. Or whether he really sped up to try and get past. But he's about where I thought he'd be, because he can still too hard everything in, just get under that gas cloud.
Or kind of bank round the top there.
Or bank around the top and really ruin Suntir's day.
And Fifth Brother sort of continuing to come in on that flank, another barrel roll out, and gets him sort of heading nicely into that channel. And already you're doing a really nice job of kind of presenting, a number of threats. So Suntir here, and again, sort of talking about the small things, but I think the small things are really important at the start of the game. Suntir here, rather than banking away and completely disengaging, going with the straights and barrel rolls, and is there a kind of purpose to that?
I've done it a bunch with aces, and it always seems to work really nicely, so I keep doing it. So I won't do it. I'll do it into a kind of list like this, where they don't have double reposition, they're not really fast and can't catch me. I'd never do this if there was like a Fenrau or something else that can boost barrel roll after me, that kind of thing, because I then end up too slow. And it just won't work for me. But it's, that crab walk sort of up the board where I can always keep going straight slowly, bank in, then boost towards them, or just hard turn in and boost straight towards them, and have relatively good escapes as well.
Yeah.
So like if you bank in here, you can boost in and get a shot if they go straight. If they bank, you can bank in, roll and boost, and you'll be out. Or if they turn in, you bank and roll and boost back around the other way. Sort of is my thinking. Yeah, and then you're into their flank.
And so if we hit pause here, guys, because I think this is an important turn. Alex, if you're Dom, what's your thoughts here? And then we'll flip it around and we'll ask you what you would have done if you were Michael.
Yeah, so like my thinking is like, because he's either got the option to keep going down the board edge, turn in to that middle channel, or kind of bank towards the gas cloud, I guess. And going straight forward kind of gives delays the engagement a little bit further and doesn't kind of box him into that channel, especially with where Fifth Brother is. So like I'd be wanting to go for an engagement where I've got as few shots coming in as possible. So I'd probably be continuing to go down that board edge. Depending on what Michael's done with Fifth Brother, I'm not sure if he's gonna just bank towards the gas cloud and then open up the barrel rolls, which would kind of make sense. But going down the middle channel seems like it would be the sort of the most dangerous place, because there's nowhere to kind of obviously disengage from or kind of open up for a sort of subsequent round, and that's the place where most of Michael's ships are most likely to be getting shots on target. So yeah, down the board edge seems like the obvious play.
That's interesting, because I think I would have done the bank, but I think it would have been a mistake, because I think I'd have wanted to keep the pressure on Cynthia and Duchess and keep those arcs wide. And I think that, as Michael's just really nicely talked us through, the risk of going straight is that if Michael does bank in or even hard turn in with Cynthia, you potentially start to get some shots into the side of your list. But the reason I think it would have been a mistake is that I think the 3 banks leave your hard turns to the left the next turn, all kind of going through that gas cloud, and then you start to limit your options. So I think it's probably what I would have chosen to do, but I think I would have regretted it afterwards. From Michael's point of view, there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to do anything other than continue to turn everything away and circle around the board here and try and get things sort of threatening from spend 2 or 3 turns going around the board and start threatening Dom's list from the rear and put him in a position where he's having to sort of engage through those gas clouds. But that is not what turns out to happen. And Michael, what did you expect Dom to do here? So we start as we can see, you start to see him coming straight down that board edge as Alex described.
I was kind of expecting the banks, but I was expecting a slower bank, like a 1 bank from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know if he's set up for that to all fit now that I look at it, but that's kind of what I was expecting. The slow 1, because I think the 1 still then left him another turn where he could still turn everything and not hit the cloud. That's what I was expecting. So that's why Fifth Brother speeds up a little, trying to threaten more. And that was another turn where I've messed up with Micheal.
And why did you say that? What did you, kind of looking back, what's the problem with that move?
From there, I've got 1 move that I can do with Micheal, to have him not land on a cloud, which is 1 bank towards Fifth Brother.
Mm-hmm.
And even there, then I've like, that, because it was hard. I hadn't played Vassal in a while. It's like, does that actually ruin what I need to do? Like, then I can't turn Fifth Brother in. It's behind that cloud. Like, I then have to at least go forward a bit. If he turned in, I was worried, but he didn't. So then, and this is why I like Duchess, because I can get all that bit round further, or I could have just 1 bank the other way and been gone, or stalled for another turn.
Yeah. So barring Vermeil, who's we say you're kind of learning as the game goes, you set Duchess and Cynthia up in such a way that they can react, and Duchess has now taken advantage of that. And definitely for this turn, looks like a really good decision. Right? She looks like she's potentially not going to take any incoming fire other than on the side arc from Jan.
I'd seen that and I was just like, 2 on 3, target lock focus. I'm still okay with it. I'll be fine, I thought.
And obviously knowing that you could bring Cynthia in to kind of support that attack as well. Any concern here about the fact that you're now engaging with your 2 kind of end game aces, with your more hard hitting support ships kind of a bit trailing out the fight? Were you tempted to not turn in?
I was. However, that's not in my nature. It's one of my flaws, is I'm generally going to choose violence over not choosing violence if I've got the chance.
And this is, to be fair to you, this is playing towards your kind of, stated goal of the sort of opening rounds, which is to take Wedge off the board. So presumably, although you don't want to lose Cynthia, were you to, over the next 2-3 turns trade Wedge for Duchess, that's not a trade that you're particularly unhappy with.
No, I'd be perfectly happy with that trade.
And we see here, and I think probably with that, you've caught Dom out a bit. I think Dom, as Alex was saying, was probably expecting to have another turn of positioning before the fight started. And now it's a real 50-50 engagement, isn't it? Certainly shots this round, you've got the better of it. Dom, I think, has 1 2-dice shot into 3 agility, whereas you've got good quality fire into Wedge here.
Yeah.
But you do have Vermeil in a bad spot, and Fifth Brother significantly out of position. So we see the opening fire here. Sintir doing well, but a decent defense roll from Wedge. Wedge takes.
From memory, I crack shotted that too.
Yeah, Wedge took one shield, and then, as you say, you spend the crack shot to take that second shield off. And then we've got Duchess firing next. Wedge out of arc. And Duchess has just snuck into range 2 on Wedge, so less agility.
I was very happy with that.
Yeah, you spend here with the 2 hits. And Wedge, decent defense size there. The three evades out of 5 is not bad. But nevertheless is half points already, down to 3 hull. And then we have the Jan all shot back. Jan did pick up the target lock. So this is going to be a double modded shot. So expectation here is that there's 2 hits if Dom wants to spend the target lock. Yeah, he goes ahead and spends it. And Duchess taking 1.
I was fine with that.
Yeah, and that's certainly a good open trade. So half of Dom's most dangerous ship for 1 damage on a kind of lesser piece in your list certainly feels good. But given the position of Vermeil, this becomes a really key turn. Dom's now in a sort of slightly tricky position, I think. He's committed past that lane that Fifth Brother is in. So it's going to be tricky, not impossible, but tricky to get at least AP5 and Wedge back down facing Fifth Brother. And Michael's aces here are going to be difficult to predict. What if you're Dom, Alex? What are you thinking this turn?
Yeah, this is a tricky turn because I think what I wasn't quite expecting Duchess and Sintir to have been there when I was talking about straightening down the board edge. Because although you've got sort of AP5 and Braylen moving before those 2, then Jan and or Wedge could both kind of end up blocked, and then the formation just sort of falls apart if Michael gets it right. And I'd almost be inclined to just kind of go really fast with. In fact, I'm not sure what colour the banks are on the Reaper, so I'm not sure if that is an option. But just kind of go as fast as possible with Vermeil, not caring about the gas cloud, and hoping to sort of bait the shots into Vermeil so that the other 3 can sort of last a bit longer. And yeah, so the obvious move is just turning everything in. But where that gas cloud is, I don't know. I'm not very good at judging range on Vassal, so I'm not sure if everything will go past it with a 3 turn. But then that would be opens up the flank to Fifth Brother. So yeah, I'm definitely preferring Michael's position on this round. And I don't know that there's like an obvious best move for the Rebels here.
No, I think it's interesting what you say as well about all of a sudden the double reposition aces of Michael's become potentially really good blockers, although they do have to get round AP5 and Braylen. Braylen is terrifying in any list, right? He's double mods any turn he wants them. And I think that as a result, you kind of expect the hard turn with Braylen here. I'd probably, I think I may even consider using the AP5 coordinate to give him a focus and then just hard one him to get that stress. And I think that leaves his arc nice and wide open, and it's tricky then for Duchess and Sintir to get out. But that does put him in an awkward position relative to Wedge and Jan. I'm not quite sure how you get out of that. Michael, what were you thinking here in terms of start us off with Fifth Brother and Vermeil, and then kind of talk through the more difficult choices with the aces?
So Fifth Brother, I wanted to 3 bank round, and I'd misjudged the range, but I thought 3 bank, if he's turning in, maybe I get a passive center, get a nice lock. Vermeil 1 banks towards him to give a coordinate focus over so that he'd be double modded.
Nice.
I'm expecting him to bank up or hard round. So I think that the aileron sloop to the right from Duchess is really good.
And you can react in a number of ways. You can either kind of aileron left and then end up at the top of the board facing down, or end up towards Dom's board edge facing back towards your own. Yeah, that sloop is really nice. I think Duchess gives you a lot of options.
So I'm almost certain that's what I did with Duchess at this point. I think I turned Suntir away here because I was too worried that I wouldn't have enough outs. Like, whatever he did, there were just too many arcs pointing towards Suntir, and I wanted to just get him out of there and save him for a turn or two.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think
I actually one turn him and boost barrel roll back down straight towards the bottom of the board here. The one thing that as dials went down, I went, he's going to one bank, coordinate, and 4K Wedge. And I even said it to him. I'm like, you're about to 4K Wedge on me, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's so frustrating how often that happens, isn't it? That you'll go through your decision tree, you make all of your movement choice, and as soon as you put the final dial down or you tell your opponent you're ready, that's when it becomes crystal clear what they're going to do. And it's something entirely unexpected. Certainly, I think the 4K from Dom would be a very good call here. Not even good call, very bold call to turn your arc away from where everything currently is really kind of playing hard for particular moves from Duchess or Suntir. I think being cautious with Suntir makes sense here. The temptation, especially given the fact that Fifth Brother and Vermeer are a little bit late to the party, would be to kind of keep Suntir's gun in the game. But any one of Jan, Braylen, or Wedge could really damage Suntir, if not kill him. And if you end up in two of those arcs, you're in real trouble. So, given that he's your endgame ship, I think it's not ideal that he's turning out the fight, but it's definitely a kind of case of discretion is the better part of valor on that occasion. Alex's suggestion is one that I don't think I'd have thought of, but now that he said it, I really like, and I think it's the best option, which is to just smash Vermeil in over those gas clouds. I think I
actually agree. Like, now that you've said it, the 3 bank just straight over and just sit there, maybe 2, and then the next turn I'm straight back in with Vermeil. It would have been really the correct choice here. Definitely.
And it gets his gun in the game. He is the kind of blunderbuss on your list, right? He's the piece that you want to get in, do damage. You're not expecting him to survive. And although the coordinates of Fifth Brother is nice, I think with Fifth Brother it's not truly necessary. It's not likely that your opponent, with the ships he's got, the low agility ships he's got, lets you take the homing missile shot. So I think that focus token is something you could have done without. And yeah, obviously, as we always say on the channel, with hindsight, everything's much easier. But being hyper aggressive here and not worrying about the cloud with Vermeil, I think would get him in the game and relevant, from turn 2 and make up for his poor positioning for the first few turns.
Completely
so
agree.
We see AP5 starting here with the 2 hard. Nice move. It's in the way of a lot of it cuts down Duchess's aileron options by looks of things. I'm not sure that the bank left fits anymore. It allows him to coordinate, and he's given a focus to Wedge, which is scary, right? It does suggest that Wedge might be considering the red move, or at least if he doesn't, he's going to be double modded. And AP5 at this stage in the game is kind of an unappealing target, so he can, I think, afford to not have those tokens himself. Because if you're wasting shots on AP5, I think Dom's happy. Vermeil, as you say, coming out, coordinating the evade, and is that sort of in case of the sort of turn in from Jan, or?
Yeah, I think this was just me misjudging Rangers entirely.
And you just thought the 5th was going to be much closer to the fight.
Yeah, much closer.
So Braylen following suit. With the 2 hard, obviously Dom kind of wanting, having used that AP5 coordinate on Wedge is wanting to kind of keep his options open in terms of getting the focus and the stress, but it does put Braylen, it makes it less likely for him to get a shot. He's sort of brought himself a bit too close to Duchess. But given that position, actually, is a nice spot for next turn, and giving him the option to go either way around Gascloud. That Duchess move is looking beautiful, unless Wedge K turns.
Yeah. And when he barrel rolled Braylen, that was when I was like, yep, he's K-turned Wedge. because he's blocked his own too hard in then. So I didn't think he would do that.
Yeah, and as you say, it sounds like we're about to see it from what you're saying, but yeah, at this point here, obviously you didn't have any of this information when you were setting dials, but at this point here, Wedge really doesn't have any other moves that fit. And so, like, from your point of view, fingers crossed that Dom has messed it up and dialed in the one bank, but it does seem like the 4K at this point is the obvious move. And Suntir getting out of town. Got options here, can boost and use that gas cloud, but still taking a lot of fire.
I was actually really concerned with that left boost that the front of his ship cleared it and Braylen gets a double-mounted shot and I have no tokens. Or I have one token. That was why I don't boost. Just looking at it, I thought the front of my ship would just clear around it.
And so you're worried that there's a sort of unobstructed shot.
Yep.
And also giving Braylen a shot where he wouldn't otherwise have one, right? So he's got nothing else to shoot at. And you actually do a really nice job here, I think, of judging the range. I would have been on Vassal worried whether that cleared range through Braylen, but I think, now that you've done it, it does nicely. And it gives Suntir some options. He's got the hard turn in between those two gas clouds and can start to come back around if he wants. So although he's not pointing in the right way, he's got options for next turn. And we see the case turn from Wedge, and this engagement starts to look like it might bring the game back around in Dom's favour, with only one of your ships involved, only taking 2 shots, but taking 2 decent quality shots.
To be honest, it's the Wedge shot, and with the Jan boost, I wasn't really quite considering when I planned this move out. Like Jan, me not respecting what Jan does to Braylen and Wedge here was really bad for my next couple of turns. Was really happy with that roll though.
so boosted by Jan, only one hit. Decides not to spend the focus, which I think is wise because you're already down to 3. And Duchess rolling the evade there to take nothing from the opening shot. So Duchess gets to swing back now. Range 2, unmodded. Are you sort of making choices about target priority here, or is it?
I think I was debating either AP5 or Braylen. Like the range 1 on Braylen seemed quite good because even with one reroll, he still can only evade 1. So, that's right. I was checking because crackshot.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was debating. I think if I had Braylen in crackshot, I would have taken it.
But AP5 not a high value enough target, and getting the hit crit there into Wedge, who is now glad he's kept that focus. So takes just the crit, which is a direct, and Wedge is down to 1. And although I haven't loved your approach so far, it's been effective, and at this point Wedge is down to 1, and you really feel like Jan has to do some damage here to Duchess, or Dom's starting to get a bit too far behind in the damage race. So we got a single modded shot, but spends the focus for 2 hits and chips another 1 into Duchess. So half of Duchess for almost all of Wedge. Suntir maybe a bit out of position, but actually at this point, Fifth Brother and Vermeil, starting to look like they're going to be relevant in the next turn or so. I think the only remaining shot this turn is AP5 onto Suntir and unmodded. He doesn't put any damage through. So it's a real interesting game state, I think, Alex. I'm not sure who I think is ahead. I think I favour Micheal just because of the amount of damage on Wedge. Dom is still in the better position. His ships are still nicely grouped. He's got options to threaten Fifth Brother and Vermeil as they come in here. But you can't ignore the fact that Wedge is nearly dead.
Yeah, but then I don't know that there's like an easy kill Wedge next turn solution here. And the problem with the other 3 ships, like AP5 excluded, I guess, but it takes a surprising amount to kill Jan and Braylen really. So it's the imperial ships can sort of lose points within 1 round fairly easily. So it's kind of that kind of don't get too comfortable because the rebels could just kind of claw it back any round. Especially from sort of where everyone is, because like Dom probably doesn't really want to split everyone up too much to kind of protect Wedge. So there isn't really like an obvious place for Duchess to go and be safe that I can see, but I might be wrong and about to see where that actually is. So then it's just really Fifth Brother and Vermeil. I don't know that they're either of them's going to have like a great shot on Wedge next round, but again, I could be wrong.
Vermeil has no shot because I'm stressed. I can't aileron, so I'd have to just bank. And this is where Vermeil for me is really out of position for a couple of turns, because I'm either just banking and doing nothing, or I'm banking and coordinating, getting stressed again, and still not able to get around the fight. And I think I do that too much going around this part. I did have a moment here where I was like, all right, all of his ships are stressed. This is going to be good. Wait, what does AP5 do again? Can coordinate stress ships. Okay, that's irrelevant, right?
AP5 is such an annoying piece, isn't he? Like he's not worth many points. He's not got a token himself. He's not doing much, so you don't really want to kill him. But he's enabling the other ships in the list to do so much, be in weird places, have modded shots when they wouldn't have done otherwise. He's and for his points, 32 points is incredible value. Plus, a nice blocker at times as well. Duchess is looking in a tricky spot here. So can still aileron because of her ability, but if she wants an action, is going to have to do a blue maneuver. He's shooting after Wedge, and as we've seen, that although he didn't get the result there, that Jan boosted Wedge is a scary prospect. Meanwhile, Braylen in a nice position. I think Braylen has to be one banking towards Fifth Brother here. I can't see anything else that really makes sense for him to do. I suppose the only other option would be to bank out the other way and get behind that cloud and kind of accept he wasn't shooting this turn. But given that Michael, you've got other type priorities, you've got Wedge that you want to kill. I think Braylen, the one bank to the left here, threaten Fifth Brother coming in. As you rightly say, Vermeil is not going to get around because of that stress, and so that kind of feels pretty good. And he can one bank, fail his barrel roll into Duchess, and sat there double modded. Jan presumably kind of just banking down towards where AP5 is currently. AP5 will have moved out of the way, using that side arc. Doesn't seem to be a reason to be any more aggressive than that. And then that leaves that space open for just a one straight or a one bank in from Wedge. Anything else? Any other options, Alex? You're kind of thinking about?
No, just kind of to echo what you said about Braylen, really, particularly because like Wedge is the obvious target, so Braylen can sort of sit there and dare Michael to shoot at him. Really, that's what I'd do. I'd want to encourage the damage to start spreading around whilst trying to get some points off the Imperial ships.
Yeah, and with Wedge here, you're kind of looking for if you can get, if he can take Duchess out before he dies, good. If he can then survive into the next turn and have one more big shot, then he's probably done enough, and you're pretty happy with that as a kind of spending him. And I think with Wedge, that's often what happens, right? He's kind of I6. You feel like he should be an ace, but with the limited repositioning of the X-wings and with that 2 agility, he's there for a good time, not a long time, right? You need to get him in, get those sort of 2-3 big shots out of him, take out that key piece of your opponent's list, and then accept that he's probably going to die at some point. He's not making it to the end game.
Yeah, definitely.
And we see kind of Fifth here trying to get involved, kind of get out of Vermeil's way to some extent, and comes in and takes the lock. And so this is something actually when I ran a similar list, Michael. I was doing the same thing. I was coming in and I was taking target locks on my kind of preferred target. And Alex pointed out at that time, he's like, why are you not passiving? I was like, oh, well, I know who I want to shoot. But actually, there's zero benefit to taking the target lock at this stage. And passive is always good because it always gives you that flexibility that, if Wedge flies into range and you need to kill him, then you kind of get that opportunity. is that something that you kind of like? Do you disagree? Do you think that the target like that was a good thing, or is it something that you kind of just, again, early days of the list?
So it was so I could coordinate him.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay, well, I take all of that back.
However, I actually agree. I should have just passived, and then not coordinated him, and then because this is again the problem with Vermeil. Vermeil is out of the shot. His 1 bank the next turn or 2 bank will not get him a shot. I have like turns of Vermeil just being a calculate battery, and that's not what you should be bringing him for.
Your 50.3 dice gun, as you say, it's not AP5. He's not. He's too much of your list to just be getting an evade out of him a turn. Cool. Duchess here kind of taking the more conservative, just at least getting her token. The hope here presumably is that you get to at least trade fire with Jan.
The hope was that he shoots over with the 2 bank, I block it, and I can trade with Jan. I'll die, but I at least get a little bit in. At least I'm not taking a shot from Wedge. That was the hope. And I turned Suntir back up and around to try and see what I could do.
I think that's really interesting. I think I would have turned Suntir right because of those gas clouds. But actually, I think that your turn left is a much better move. And even at this stage of the game, you've got those options. You're keeping Dom guessing, right? And he's got threats coming from different parts of the board again. Wedge did bump, but very unluckily for you, bumps all the way back onto Jan and is now sat range 1 with his focus token that AP5 gave him.
This hurts.
Yeah. And so Dom here with 4 dice, the option to boost it to 5 into a 1 agility Duchess, and expecting that Duchess is going to die here. I might have been tempted to be greedy, I think, and keep the Jan boost for the Braylen shot, but is that what Dom does? Potentially. So no boost there, gets the 3 hits, and only just, but does manage to kill Duchess before she fires. And as you said, Alex, and now nothing is shooting Wedge. That block really nice for a number of reasons, and Wedge has got that extra 2 turns of fire that we said that he needs to kind of have made his points. Jan here with a range 2, I think just unobstructed. Sorry, range 3 side arc, unobstructed, but into an evading 5th brother. So unlikely to do any damage. We'll see this shot come in a moment. And whilst we're waiting for that shot to come in, 5th brother's got a choice here of obviously he's got the homing missiles set up, but it's into an 8 health 4 shielded Braylen. Do you take that shot, or do you have a better sort of use for those homing missiles later in the game?
Fairly certain I don't spend it. I'm pretty sure I just go, actually, it's pretty much with what I've got, it's the same if I just take the target lock shot, 2 dice into 1. I'm fairly certain that's what I would have done here, because I want to save the homing missile for Wedge.
And there we see that Jan shot coming in and naturally evaded by 5th. Yeah, and I think that's right. I think that the spending the homing missiles does 2 things, right? You only get, you're likely to get a damage here at least, so it's only 1 more damage. The crits are relevant because it's onto shields, and also to do that, it requires you to spend both your force, leaving you 4 star for next turn. So I think the right decision here, even though you've got that lock, is just the primary attack and start trying to chip Braylen down, and hope that at some stage Vermeil gets involved. So nice roll there, hit crit, and Braylen rolls the blank, and even with the reroll, sticks on the blank, so it takes 2 shields. And looking pretty even, but you have got the Braylen shot coming in here onto 5th. 3 dice and evade.
Yeah, and this is again where I'm not quite respecting the Jan. I can't remember if he boosted this. I feel like he did.
Just taking the stress there. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was, I went, oh, I forgot about that. I'm fairly certain I did that here.
Yeah. And it makes a difference, right? So you can see he's just, with the rerolls and the focus spend, has just rolled 4. 5th slightly under average there with the dice, spending the evade and takes shields, gets halved. And maybe slightly unlucky there to get half, but with that 4 dice shot, you were likely to take a damage. And as you say, it's that one extra dice just tips him over the edge. You've gone from a Braylen shot where he'd have been lucky to do damage to one where actually he had a decent chance of doing it and gets slightly over average and gets the 2. And it just feels at this point like it's the game's starting to go away from you a little bit. You know, you've not quite got Wedge off the table when you needed to. Fifth has got half there relatively cheaply. Vermeil is still not in a great spot for next turn. But you do have Suntir in quite a nice spot now, coming in behind Wedge, meaning that Jan and AP5 can't completely ignore your side of the board and can't sort of hard commit back in. At this point in the game, how are you feeling? Were you kind of feeling like it was going well, badly? It was a disaster?
I thought I had one more shot at this point. I thought fifth brother I was really worried about. So Vermeil, this is an easy 1 bank, and I'm pretty sure this is the turn where I go, I can't coordinate. I need to get ailerons turned back in, or I'm never getting a shot with him again. And, you know, Vermeil with his ability, he's supposed to be the last piece that fires and actually punches some damage through. I'm pretty sure I 3-hard Suntir back up towards the board, towards Wedge here, because I feel that's fairly safe and gets me threatening again and active.
Yep.
And then fifth brother, I'm debating the 1 bank towards Braylen and the 1 hard back up around the cloud.
Sort of the offensive versus defensive moves there.
Yeah.
And both have got merit, right? Like the any move towards Braylen, it has a high chance of bumping, but then at least if you bump, you're not taking shots from Braylen himself. There's a possibility that Braylen's rolled out of the way. Wedge is a major issue for fifth brother here, though, right? Wedge is, with that bank down, makes that bank towards Braylen very risky. Again, with the Jan Orr's boost, and it just makes such a difference, right? With Wedge, with 3 dice, you know, in a range shot into fifth brother, even with Wedge's ability, you expect that he's going to be unlikely to do 2 damage. You know, you can take the evade, you sit there okay. But with Jan and it, you know, and the potential for 4 dice, maybe even double modded if AP5 gives him a focus, then fifth brother's really scared. So I think of the 2, probably 1 hard to the left, but then Wedge could hard turn and catch that. Yeah, I think it's a real 50-50. There's no kind of right answer there.
And that was what I felt. I was like, it's 50-50. I go for the block on Braylen, just to save that a little bit. And I was hoping that he would go, actually, Suntir is likely to turn back in. I'll turn up towards Suntir. And that's what I was hoping he did. I was hoping he didn't call it and just bank straight towards fifth brother, because, yeah, I was expecting him to just get wiped if he did.
And there's times like that in every game, aren't there, Alex, where it's just a 50-50, right? There's looking at this board state and fifth brother, I don't think there is a definitely correct move. I think you just have to cross your fingers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those kind of classic like coin flip moments, and they're kind of stressful but also quite fun.
Yes, it was pretty fun actually. I really did enjoy this game.
I think they're really nicely balanced lists. I write it really evenly matched, 4 ships aside. Yeah, it feels like a really nice game.
Speaking of kind of coin flips, like one dice result one way or the other against Wedge earlier in the game, and it would be a really different board state. So I think that's kind of testament to like how like relatively evenly matched it has been. Yeah,
absolutely. If Wedge goes down before killing Duchess, this game is hugely different, and all of a sudden, you know, Micheal is massively up. And you can see here Wedge sat on one health, has been for 2 turns. It could easily have been different. And even with the bump, even the unlucky bump and Wedge getting the shot onto Duchess, it was single modded, right? It was likely to kill, but with those single modded shots, especially with Dom choosing not to boost it, they can go wrong. You know, Wedge the previous turn had only managed to get 1 hit out of it, and if he'd done the same again, Duchess would have lived. Vermeil trying to come around again. Looks, as you say, like another turn that Vermeil might not be getting a shot here, depending on what Braylen does. And well, at least with the AP5 move, I think that makes that your decision to come up towards Braylen probably at this stage the better decision, bumping into AP5 or allowing AP5 to have a cheap shot there would have been bad. And in this position here, you predict that you're almost certainly bumping Braylen. It's got the 2 straightforward would be a nice choice. We'll see if Dom goes for that. The issue with the 2 straightforward, I think it does. Wow, that's very well played. I think for me, the issue with that would have been the inability to react if fifth had turned away. With the 1 bank, you have a high chance of clipping the back of fifth, whereas this is really committing hard to the fact that fifth brother's turning in and you're going to fly over the top of him. And looks like at the moment he's in Vermeil's arc, but I'm expecting the barrel roll away to get those double mods and to get him out of arc. I think Dom, it can't be underestimated. Dom has done a really nice job of this so far. He's not overcommitted. I think at any point he's made a couple of ballsy decisions. I think that K-turn with Wedge, looked marvelous and actually turned out to be an amazing move. But had Duchess done something different, he could have ended up looking a bit silly with Wedge there, kind of facing out of the fight and stressed. So I think Dom's done a really nice job of keeping his arcs open. Jan, who, as we've been saying, is a really important piece. This is the first round she's been under any threat at all, really. And Braylen starting to become more and more of an important piece in the game. And there's the banking for Wedge. So now sat at range 1 of fifth brother for potentially 5 dice, only single modded, with the 2 health and 2 agility is scary here. So at this point, in terms of win condition, are you kind of playing turn to turn, or have you got an idea in your mind of what has to happen for you to win this game?
So I was hoping I would get Wedge down without fifth dying, was my original plan. That doesn't happen. Fifth gets obliterated here.
So we see the Sintir shot first coming into Jan.
Yeah.
Sintir actually now, probably for the first time in the game, in a really nice position. It looks like he's got a few turns of being relevant. Gets those 2 hits, is out of arc, so he can spend that focus. And chips 1 damage through. I think Dom decided to spend his focus here. And Jan just taking a shield. But Sintir's starting to be in a nice place. And this is the shot you're talking about, boosted by Jan. That stress should be on Jan rather than Wedge. I think you probably saw that out in a moment. And this is 5 dice. And 2 hits, 2 crits, so he needs focus tokens. And that is a dead fifth. 2 agility, even with the evade. Nothing you can do about it. And at this point, you're in trouble, right? You've got half your list versus virtually all of Dom's list. The only thing that's taken damage is Wedge. A couple on Braylen. And you need Vermeil to kill Wedge here, but he's at range 3 with a focus token, and there's a really reasonable chance that Wedge survives again, and 1 more shot into Vermeil here from Wedge, and you think that you're going to be too far behind to bring it back. We see a sort of arc check there from Jan. I think she maybe just has range 3 into Vermeil, but doesn't spend the focus on that obstructed shot, and Vermeil rolls out of it. And Wedge, having not spent his focus, Vermeil's ability not on, so you don't get that free mod.
I was really sad about that. I really wanted that.
Just range 3 by millimeters, so sort of everything kind of stacking up against you here. 2 hits, not bad. And you've got hope, right? So only the one focus there, not enough for Wedge, and Wedge dies. But still, I think, given where Vermeil is and the stress, again, probably not getting shots next turn. About to take a big shot incoming here from Braylen. And really, at this point, it's looking like Sintir is going to have to do it on his own. Braylen, they're not stressed. Didn't have the reroll, but does 3 damage to Vermeil, and this doesn't look great, Michael. So at this stage, how are you as a player? Are you kind of someone who's resigned to oh well, it's a fun game. I've learned a lot about the list. We'll keep playing. We'll see how it goes. Or are you someone who sits there and goes, right, now, what are the points? How do I win this game?
At this point, I'm feeling like I'm pretty much out of it. The fact that Braylen's still full, that Vermeil is stressed and facing the wrong way is bad, but I really like where Sintir is.
Mm-hmm.
So, because Jan should be stressed, and I'm fairly certain we picked that up at some point because she boosted the shot.
Yeah.
So I feel really safe with Sintir's 2 bank towards like Braylen
an AP5.
AP5 here. And just going, that feels safe. If I get blocked, I get a focus anyway. Braylen's not shooting me. AP5 will most likely be unmodded. This feels fine. Vermeil I'm almost certain, to bank and just evade and go, I will turn around next turn. I was like fairly certain Vermeil won't die this turn, but will get a shot next turn, and then maybe Suntir can pull it out if I can like just do enough to Braylen where I could maybe halve him, then maybe kill him the next turn, and it's just Suntir on Jan and AP5, that maybe I could win.
Yeah, I think that's really clear thinking, right? Like it's unlikely, and you need things to go in your favour, but it's not out of the question. And I think you're absolutely right. Even with the 5 dice, with the evade, Braylen would need crits to kill Vermeil. And although it's unlikely, like you say, if you sloop next turn and get the shot, if, I know it's a big if, but if Vermeil was to put 4 into Braylen, was to have that god roll and put 4 into Braylen, then all of a sudden, Braylen is one-shottable by Suntir. Suntir doesn't have to worry about the return fire. He can boost in. He can get into range 1 of Braylen on a future turn and kill him. You've got a turn here of range 1 fire into Jan, so Jan is going to be lucky to not be halved at the end of this, and it starts to feel manageable. Now you need a couple of big swings of dice in your favour to do that, but I think that by doing that and by having that plan, you give yourself the opportunity to still win this game, and versus the opposite, which everyone's guilty of every now and then, of kind of giving in and making a kind of dumb plays, and or hard turning Vermeil because you're desperate to have a shot and getting him killed, and then you give yourself 0 chance. So I think that all sounds really, really sensible and kind of that real nice reevaluation of the situation.
I was just going to ask how conscious you are of the time limit at this point.
From memory, pretty conscious. I think I had it in a browser open next to me.
And that's a really good question. I think that with that reassessment, you need to take everything into account. So not only do you need to know what the points are, and actually, apologies to the stream, I don't have the points up at the moment. I realise in a minute, and we get them up on screen. But yeah, you also need to know that there's enough time for your plan to work. And I think at this point, there's at least sort of 3 or 4 turns left in the game. And that is tight, but just enough for Micheal to get back into it. And we can see as the points go up here that at the moment you're not actually too far behind. You're only 7 points down. The issue for you, of course, is that Vermeil is not likely to make it to the end of the game.
No.
So yeah, I guess given enough time, like Suntir could do it, but especially with like the way the vassal works, I'm not sure how that was it one of those ones where it's like an hour plus 2.
Yeah.
So there's it's going to be a fairly limited amount of rounds left to actually get those points that you need.
Yeah, I think it's either 3 or 4 rounds after this.
And so we see damage coming in here. Suntir has managed to do 2 to Jan there. So she's half down to 2 hull. And Jan not doing anything through that gas cloud with her side arc attack into Vermeil. And you get a little bit lucky here. Braylen, even with the rerolls, doesn't get any hits and no more damage from the AP5 shot. So a good turn for you, and Vermeil will live to take more shots in this game.
That I was not expecting. And I'm pretty sure at this point I was like, okay, now we've got something like Jan is possibly 1 turn off dying. If Suntir lines are up again, AP5 probably won't shoot. Braylen, where is he? He's taken 2 shields, so he's not far off half at least. So I was like, okay, maybe I can get some more points. I'm certain I sloop with, like, Vermeil just goes 1 forward sloop.
And so there are a couple of options here with Vermeil. You've got that sleep, as you say. You've also got the option of banking round and getting behind Jan. The problem there being that Jan is moving second and you're likely to bump into her. So I think I agree with you. I think I prefer the sleep with Vermeil and line him up to kind of hopefully get shots this round and certainly react to wherever Dom's ships go next round. Jan got a few options, but is going to be moving away from Suntir. So Suntir, I think I like the 2 bank maybe a bit quick. So maybe the 1 hard to the right, I think is probably safe from bumping at least. And Suntir does have a little bit of an issue though with Braylen, and Dom has a choice to make here between going after Vermeil with Braylen and going towards Suntir. Of those 2, Alex, have you got any kind of strong preference for one or the other?
So my thinking was really like, because obviously there's a sloop, but then there's the option to kind of go around the gas cloud and then try and come back in a couple of rounds later. And then that kind of saves the points from Vermeil as well. So I'd almost be tempted to go after Soontir, kind of half expecting that and not really expecting Braylen to do much if he does do the sloop.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's Soontir that's going to win the game or lose the game for Dom rather than Vermeil.
Yeah, I think I agree entirely. I think at this point, if you bank Braylen up towards the top of the board to trade shots with Vermeil, then the likelihood is that you win that damage race and you take Vermeil off the board. But it's playing towards Michael's win condition, right? And it's playing towards Vermeil doing significant damage before he dies and leaving Soontir with an achievable task in terms of taking things out. Whereas if you were to bank Braylen left here, it does a couple of things. It means that Vermeil is unlikely to get a shot on Braylen this round. The sloop is likely to be out of range. If he is coming around the top of the gas cloud, his arc won't be in the right place. And it threatens, if Soontir is being aggressive, he's going to have to make a choice between using his tokens on offense against a hurt Jan and then sitting there and crossing his fingers against a 3, 4, potentially even 5 dice Braylen shot, or being a bit more conservative and probably not putting so much damage into Jan. So we see the sleep here. With Soontir, what were your thoughts? Were you worried about where Braylen might be?
Yep. And this was do I turn towards top of the board, try and hide behind the gas cloud? I was expecting Braylen to turn up here, not go straight. And that barrel roll is going to cause me grief. I can tell you now.
So Braylen, as you say, barrel rolling into a really nice position, nice wide arc on Soontir, were he to come towards or go away, actually is now in trouble. And Jan with the one straightforward. I think probably Don there playing to block Soontir, were he to do the 2 bank to the right. But also fits really nicely judged. We'll give Don the benefit of the doubt and say that he meant that. And so Jan gets the bonus of an action here.
We were both surprised that fit.
Yeah, I was going to say,
wow, that fits.
The coordinated target lock. It looks like he was expecting it to bump, really.
Yeah. And Soontir decides to go away here, which I think in
direction. Completely the wrong direction. Yep.
It's tricky, isn't it? He's now taking more. Had he turned in, he'd have been able to boost and at least get himself out of trouble, probably get himself out of both Braylen and Jan's arc, and maybe just take the rear arc shot from AP5, maybe even get a shot on his own. It's that situation you end up in a lot with Soontir, where you either double reposition to sort of get range and maybe take fewer shots but have no tokens, or you token up and get the one reposition action for range. And you go with that second option. So Soontir not firing and taking 2 decent quality shots here. So only the mobile arc from Jan, so the 2 dice, gets the 2 hits, spending the kind of extra focus, which is nice, but was always likely to with the target lock. And Soontir not doing you any favours, so only the one evades, takes a cheap damage there. And Vermeil does get a shot, but range 3. I think the shot into Jan is just unobstructed. But it's range 3, so 3 unmodded dice into 3 with a focus. Just the one hit. Vermeil's ability here not triggering, and Jan spends the focus to get the one evade. And then this is the big shot. Braylen presumably about to be boosted up to 4 dice by Jan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we see the stress going down. And Soontir in trouble here. We'll see the dice rolls and see what Braylen manages to get. Average is somewhere between 3 and 4 here. So that's the 2 rerolls and this focus token. And that's the 4 hits. So Soontir needs all paint to live. And just gets it for you.
Yep.
So as you say, a little bit unlucky there to take the damage from the 2 dice gun, but overall taking 2 hits there, not unexpected given the position Soontir was in. Not really talked about it yet, but Vermeil's ability in a lot of games, I think, like, as you were describing, he's the last thing shooting in the list. Things are going to be token deprived, and he's going to be a real scary gun. But actually, just the build of Dom's list is tricky for you as well. Jan is likely to have tokens anytime you're shooting at her, and Braylen, it's another area where losing that role at the start for initiative is hurting you, because Braylen is shooting after Vermeil. So he's able to sit there, keep his focus token, and then use it on offense without ever having triggered Vermeil's ability. So losing the points there, I think, is the most damaging thing for you. Suntir at 1 health, we all know, can still live forever, can still do a lot of damage. But having given up those extra sort of 26, 27 points, just puts the kind of winning line a little bit further out of your grasp. I think you still need to do the same thing. You still need Vermeil to get some big hits in, do some damage to Braylen while Suntir finishes off Jan. But it's looking like it's a more tricky task than it was a moment ago. Dom here, I think, just needs to be conservative, right? I don't think he needs to do anything special. What do you guys think? Any kind of other options for Dom? Anything clever he can do? Or is it just a kind of bank Braylen in, turn AP5 in, and then run away with Jan?
Yeah, I was expecting the bank down from Jan and then just to clear her stress and then rotate her arc again. The bank up with Braylen, that from AP5. And I was kind of hoping that, so Vermeil will one bank up towards AP5 here. I just hope that he does enough damage this turn, because I felt like this is a pretty good turn where I can get a lot, and then Suntir just runs.
With the stress there, Vermeil having to come in and be in the way of that too hard, Suntir is going to have a turn off here to kind of come back around. Sort of tricky thing about flying, I found as well, flying that one medium base with the small bases is it's often just kind of just slightly in the way, and like it's just that bit more difficult to kind of weave through the obstacles and around your other ships. So we're going to have a trade of fire here, I presume, between Vermeil and Braylen, range 1. Vermeil could do decent damage here, but doesn't have the mods. Has taken the evade, sensibly so, to sort of try and stay alive. And Suntir not getting a shot. AP5 here as well, against the 1 agility of Vermeil, could chip some damage through. Suntir at least has the nice, he can bank out of Braylen's arc here. Any temptation to kind of leave Suntir there to tempt Braylen into the shot?
No, none at all.
That's interesting. I think I might have. And obviously the risk there is that Braylen kills Suntir, and Braylen's got a double modded 3 dice shot. 1 health Suntir could just die. But I think with boosting out, you've now got 6 or 7 dice coming into Vermeil. And Vermeil has a high chance of dying. So Janel's shot was obstructed, doesn't do anything. So it's a nice start. And I just wonder if you're in such a sort of difficult position in the game, whether you need that swing of luck. You need Braylen to take the shot at Suntir to evade out of it, and then your big hit from Vermeil, and it kind of gets you back in the game. So I'm not saying it's a sensible decision to leave Suntir there, but I think maybe with the position in the game, you need Dom to be tempted into dividing his fire and just cross your fingers that you get out of it.
Well, I think I'd agree more if Braylen was shooting before Vermeil.
Yeah.
Because then that kind of there's a chance that, but then I don't know. I get where you're coming from. But at the same time, like Vermeil versus all 3 of them, then would be very sad for Micheal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If Suntir dies, the plan has failed. The gambit didn't work, and you have lost the game. Like I totally accept that. Whereas this is the kind of lower risk. I just wonder at this point, the lower risk option is realistically gives you the chance to win the game.
Because the ideal situation here is that Vermeil survives after halving Braylen, and then Suntir kind of comes back round and kills Jan before the time's up.
Yeah. And so we see this is the Vermeil shot coming in. And you decide to go into AP5 here. What was the thinking behind that?
I felt like it would get me more points in the end. The shot into Braylen with his rerolls, I don't get my ability, whereas I get the ability into AP5.
Yep.
That was the decision there.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think it's sort of slightly tricky on points. Were you to kill AP5, it's not quite enough to get you ahead on points. And I think I can understand the desire to have, Vermeil's not been doing a lot, and without the mods, he's not been rolling very well. and I can understand the desire to have his ability work. And I think were there more turns left in the game, I think AP5 is probably the right shot. But I think because AP5 dead on his own is not enough points to win you the game, I think you probably needed to half Braylen there and then hope that the next turn you can maybe bump Braylen and the combination of Sintir and Vermeil will kill AP5 before he shoots. But not saying it's a terrible decision, but I think were you to do it again, maybe the shot into Braylen was better. You see Vermeil here trying rolling the evade, but Braylen's got the hit and crit through. And so that is Vermeil down to 3 hull, and we're waiting to see the crit come in.
Oh, the other thing that I should probably point out was I forgot the crack shot from Vermeil onto AP5 this turn.
Oh.
Wow, that is
which would have made him half points.
Yeah. Yeah, and equally, you had it versus Braylen as well, right? Which negates his evade that he would have rolled.
Yeah.
So either way, yeah, and I think that is something that you and I are. Well, I'm now going to bring you down to my level. Forgetting crack shot is the thing I am best at in X-Wing. So Braylen takes a structural damage there. It's pretty devastating for any ship, especially I think there's 1 agility ships. That's right. And then AP5 has the follow-up here into an agility list, so has an evade token, but in 2nd edition that is worth nothing if you don't have any dice to spend it on, and rolls the 1 hit and takes Vermeil down to 2. Yeah, I think, as we say a lot, especially when Lloyd's on, I'm by no means trying to tell the Australian national champion how to play X-Wing, and it is much easier having watched this game now for the 2nd time and being sat here, on a lazy Saturday morning with no pressure to make these decisions. But with the points as they were, I think that the only way that you, or for me, the only way that you win this game, I think, was to half Braylen there. And then in the final 1 or 2 turns of the game, I think that you've got the turn marker up. I think it might be 2 turns left to somehow keep Vermeil alive and kill AP5 before he does anything relevant. And I think then at that point, with a half Braylen and a half Jan, it's at least close on points.
So currently I think it's 147 to 86. And I remember doing this on the fly because I thought this was hilarious. If I kill Jan and kill AP5, which became my new life's mission, and I don't lose Vermeil here, we're both on 147. And we go to Salvo.
Nice.
And at this point, I make that my life's mission to try and achieve.
Okay. So that's absolutely fair enough. It shows how difficult it is, right? It's 2.0, half points. It is really, really difficult to know your win condition, and I think it makes it even more helpful if you're able to do it. In 1st edition, it was a lot easier, but the amount of games that you see on stream, you listen to the players afterwards, and they're not aware. There's shots going in the last round into the wrong target, players turning into fight when if they'd run away, they could have won the game. And so, yeah, actually, you found the win condition, and the win condition, as you say, is to kill AP5 and Jan. And however unlikely that is, it would give you that final salvo and the chance to win.
My aim here was that Suntir tries somehow to kill Jan, somehow, and because Jan needs to die before she can shoot at Vermeil.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise Vermeil has too high of a chance of dying, and then my win condition is completely out. And then Vermeil has to deal with AP5.
And so Braylen less of an issue this turn because of that stress. He's not likely to be able to get his gun back around onto Vermeil. So you have got, at least this turn where that may go in your favour. So 2 turn out there from AP5. Wonder if he's going to coordinate Braylen again. Seems kind of pointless coordinating Braylen this turn, so maybe you just take the token yourself. I'm not expecting Braylen to get a shot.
I think he takes the calculate.
And then Vermeil here with Braylen there doesn't really have much choice. So just bump, presumably with the ailerons. Again, slight sort of unfamiliarity with the Reaper there. Could have just gone 1 straight and avoided the stress, taken the bump sort of twice in a row.
I think I was actually okay with that because I was more worried about the next turn, that if he did turn up there, if I'm not stressed, I wouldn't be able to get back around and catch AP5.
Nice. So yeah, so I take it back. That's really nice. So you're intentionally turning the ailerons off that turn. And yeah, Suntir just has to get as close to Jan as quickly as possible.
Yeah. The problem was Dom also saw that and just started to run with Jan.
Ran away. Yeah. Tom's been on the channel a few times, and as was moaning at me last week that he said that he thinks he's lost 2 games of X-Wing in the last 2 months, and they've both been on our channel. So we'll see if he can do any better. It's looking good for him at the moment. So to boost around, I like the bank boost. I think that you've sort of accepted that the shot into Jan this turn is not going to be good enough quality, and getting those extra dice into AP5 gives you like a pretty good chance at this point, right? You've got single modded, but range 2, and is that obstructed, or it looks probably just unobstructed?
I think it was just unobstructed.
And so now looking good for being able to kill AP5. You keep focus here, I think. Worrying about the Jan shot, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I kept the focus worrying about the Jan shot. He goes to 1 health, noting that the crack shot the turn before would have killed him.
Yeah.
So that was the not spend on the crack shot really cost me on this, because that would have been AP5 dead.
So yeah, so he's spent there to go to 2 because he spent his calculate, takes the 1 health, leaving him on 2. So he would have been on 1, but you've got the Vermeil shot coming in here. So this is Jan firing back, only gets the 1 hit, and Suntir is okay. In hindsight, could have spent the focus, but understandable. If Suntir dies, you've lost this game. And then we get Vermeil coming in, finally gets his ability triggering, but only for the 2 hits. And AP5 was the 1 he needs, and that's the point where the crack shot the previous round, and he would have been dead.
Yeah.
So it gives you 2 problems. It means that you can't focus fire on Jan next turn with both of your ships.
Or Braylen.
And AP5 here to add insult to injury. Natural, unmodded, hit, crit into a 0 agility.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that.
Yeah. And takes him out.
At which point I can't win the game.
And yeah, and actually, I didn't give you enough credit initially watching through this. You've really, despite the mistakes of Vermeil in the early game, you've given yourself every chance to win this game at every opportunity. And there, the likely outcome, even without spending the crack the previous turn, is that AP5 dies that turn. And if he does, you've got Braylen, who still isn't getting a shot next turn, because the best he can do is bank down towards where Jan is. And you have then Vermeil and Suntir able to close in on Jan. And I suppose the only decision there to make is, does Vermeil get involved, knowing that you're likely to need 2 shots to kill Jan, but the risk is that your agility-less Reaper will die before that happens, or do you leave it all up to Suntir? But either way, I think you have a good chance of winning the game should you kill AP5 on that turn, and the fact you haven't is kind of just down to a little bit of bad luck in the end there. So we're watching the final turn of the game here. I think we can all agree at this point that it is unwinnable. Suntir can't score enough points with the 1 round remaining. Micheal, I'll give it to you first. In terms of learning points to this game, before we started, you said that you actually go on to take this list to a different competition. And so what did you learn from this? What did you take from it?
My main thing that I took from it was I was happy with where Suntir starts. I'm happy with where Duchess starts. It's similar to how I've flown some aces before, with 1 in the middle, 1 on flanking like that. But Vermeil, just starting him in the middle there, where he's already got a rock on the outside of him and he's facing a bunch of rocks. He's so hard to maneuver because he doesn't have those turns if he's already stressed. All of his turns are red. That just ruined me. So when I did play in the Sydney Space Jam from Gold Squadron, he was always starting outside, very hard board edge, on the side that had the least obstacles sort of up in their corner. So he could just sit there banking around and turning in and then come in and get the most shots. And I found that when he got the most shots in the game were the ones that I was most likely to win.
Yeah. And so nice to hear that you kind of didn't come out of this sort of disheartened with the list. you kind of obviously looked at it and were like, oh, no, it's, you know, I didn't fly it ultimately. It wasn't a bad list. Don't abandon it. Just change the setup slightly, and all of a sudden, it's much more powerful and it works much better. And
I did also drop the crack shot off him so that I could go to 199 just to get the list that went to 200. I at least got the bid on those for these, like, this style of beef list that's likely to do that.
And how did you find the list in general in that competition? They're kind of a combination of Fifth Brother with these other elements. Did it work well for you?
So Fifth Brother I really liked. In my first game in that, I was against an advanced sensor Guri, which tore my list apart in the end. But Fifth Brother, like with the passive sensors, just creates this massive net, which Guri still just does not want to be in. So I could kind of hurt her. I just ignored Dengar too much in that game and still lost it. And then there was also a game I didn't get Vermeil around enough. And then I started playing better, getting Vermeil around. And then it was my Suntier play after that kind of let me down. But I learned from that as well, as sometimes you don't have to choose violence with a Suntier.
Yeah, that is certainly something that I've been learning flying for Suntier. I've been finding similar things. It's nice to hear that you had a sort of similar experience. And Fifth Brother's an amazing piece, and I've really liked just how he allows you to take Suntier in a 200-point list, because he can scare off those aces that, if they were moving after Suntier normally, would be a nightmare. But he can, you can use Fifth Brother as kind of Suntier's bodyguard, really, and then kind of keep him there to keep Suntier safe until whatever the most scary thing is has gone. Alex, for you, I thought an interesting game, and I thought Michael spoke really nicely about it. What's kind of your takeaways from it in terms of the lists and how things were played?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned the Fifth Brother being Cynthia's bodyguard, because like my first thought was like, Cynthia in 200-point list. Like, I wonder how that works. And well, now I know the answer to that. And like, I think the important thing to take away from this game is that, like, even though the result didn't go in Michael's favour, like, there were so many opportunities where it could have done, which makes it like a really interesting game, and you can sort of see the impact of decisions kind of playing out in real time. So like, I'm quite glad to have sort of seen it and learned a lot from it. I think I'm going to give that list a go next time I play now.
Yeah, certainly for me, that kind of, I think for my playstyle, I still prefer Sabak, but trying to fit Vermeil in there as well is definitely something, because I'm not really sure about that fourth slot yet.
Well, that was the next question I was going to ask, really. Like, firstly, what are Michael's thoughts on Vermeil in that fourth slot? And for both of you, like, would you replace it with something different, and what would that be?
I like Vermeil there. I like the option of the coordinate. He tanks a little bit, and when he is hitting last, if he has got a focus, he will hit really hard. So I kind of like him there. You can drop, if you drop, so in that one I had 3 crack shots. If you drop 2 of the crack shots, you can change Duchess to Sabak, I'm fairly certain. Sabak's 2 points more. Yeah, so you can just straight swap that if that's your preference. And I haven't tried it because I like Duchess. It's just personal preference. However, I'm not sure it's the right call. I haven't tried the other version yet, and it's something I would look at going to Sabak.
Yeah, I've tried it.
Yeah.
I've tried it with Sabak, and the fourth slot that I've been sort of vacillating between have been a Trajectory Simulator Cutlass, which is incredible in some matchups and kind of useless in others. And my real favourite, I think, because it's the most fun, is an Advanced Proton Torps Afterburners Rhymer. And I think that might be the best if you're taking Sabak, because in that situation, there's no good choice. There's Suntier, who shouldn't be a good target in the opening if you've got it right. Fifth Brother, who's not going to take much damage and is going to really threaten the kind of high agility, low health ships. And so you're left kind of trying to kill Sabak and Reimer at the same time. And if you try and kill Reimer, then he only gets 1 Advanced Proton Torp off, and that's all good. But you've had 4, 5, 6 rounds of a fully powered Sabak ripping through your list. And if, as my most recent opponent did, you do a really nice job and take out Fifth Brother and Sabak early on, then Reimer's rolling around, and in that match I got 3 sets of advanced Proton Torps off and the final ones to win the game. And that's a really nice balance. That kind of, everything has to die, but you cannot kill everything quick enough. So yeah, give that a try, Michael. That's super fun. Probably not as good as taking Duchess and Vermeil. I think they're probably the more high skill, high finesse ships to take.
That sounds like
certainly...
a lot of fun though, so I'm definitely taking that.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
There's a lot of moments of your opponent going, he can shoot at range 0. Oh no. Against Ed in the recent game, the final turn was me rolling and linking to a target lock, and then old Terok bumping into the front to take only single modded advanced Proton Torp at range 0, which it turns out you do not get Concord Dawn at range 0. That's a nice bonus.
Nope, you sure don't.
So that was pretty fun. I think to get back to the game and to sort of round it up before we say goodbye, I agree entirely, Alex. And I think that you were saying that Michael had the opportunity to win it throughout the game, and he did. And I think that was due to just continued good decision making, reassessing, keeping his eye on the victory condition, and really that kind of focus is what separates the national champions from the rest of us idiots. Never knowing when you're beaten and always having a plan. And I think we need a word for Dom here. So we've said that it's his first win on the channel, but it's far from his first win this year. Dom's an incredible player, incredibly consistent. And I don't think he put a foot wrong in that game. I think his role as the rebel list, and often is when you're the rebel list, is to create the problem for your opponent to solve. I thought the K-turn early game with Wedge was inspired and really brought it back from a bad opening engagement. And I thought from that point on, just real solid manoeuvres, keeping his arcs wide, getting good quality shots into targets. And yeah, with those Janors beasts, Braylen and Wedge are terrifying. This is an archetype we're seeing a lot of sort of around the UK at the moment. It's sort of Jan plus Wedge plus some stuff. Having said at the start, Wedge needs to die first, which I think is probably correct. Is there an argument for trying to kill Jan as your opening target?
I don't know if there was. I still think Wedge was the right call. I still think that it wasn't the target priority at the start that lost me it. It was the fact that I've got both of my ace ships engaging first without Vermeil there to back them up, and with Fifth Brother lagging way too far behind. If they're up there closer and I've got all 4 ships firing on the second turn, at least, like the first turn, if only 2 are firing, it's fine. But at least having all 4 firing on the second turn, it would have greatly improved my chances, rather than, I think I had Duchess firing on the second turn, and that was not enough. And that really had me too far behind. And I was just hoping, I really had to play too well and hope on too much dice luck to get it back from there. I think that was the problem.
And I think I agree. And even sort of winding out past this matchup, you want to kill Janors first, but the problem there with the token stack is she can tank too much damage. With average or better rolls, you can spend too many rounds trying to kill Jan, by which point Wedge has killed your list. So yeah, I think, much as I don't want it to be the answer, I think the answer is that you have to just accept that Jan is doing what Jan does and still kill Wedge first. Oof, it's a good list. And so I think with that, we'll say thank you very much, Michael, for coming on. Really interesting to talk to you again. Good luck for the rest of the tournament. Thank you, Alex, for stepping in.
Oh, my pleasure. It was really fun.
And my favourite replacement Lloyd.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye.